Imagine creating the soundtrack of a generation, becoming a symbol of African excellence, and then walking away at your peak. This is the story of Sauti Sol, four young men who turned their friendship into a musical empire. They didn't just sing songs, they told stories. They gave a sound to heartbreak, to joy, to the African dream. But like every great band, there came a moment when the music stopped, or rather, changed. This isn't just a biography. This is a masterclass on brotherhood, fame, pressure, and the courage to walk away from something beloved. Our story begins in Nairobi, at Upper Hill School, a place known more for academics than fame. But in the early 2000s, four students were quietly planting seeds of something special. Bien-Aimé Baraza, Willis Chimano, Savara Muddy, and Polycarp Otieno. They didn't have producers. They didn't have a studio. What they had was harmony. Literally, their earliest group name? Voices in Perfect Harmony, a raw a cappella group with big dreams. In 2005, they rebranded. The new name? Sauti Sol. Sauti means voice in Swahili. Sol, sun, in Spanish. The voice of the sun. A name that would soon shine across the continent. Kenya in the late 2000s had an evolving music scene. Western pop was trendy. Nigerian Afrobeats were rising. But Sauti Sol came in softly, with guitar strings and Swahili lyrics. Their debut album, Mwanzo, released in 2009, was like a breath of fresh air. No frills, no hype, just heartfelt music. Lazizi, their breakout single, was simple, a love letter over coffee. But it struck a nerve. It was the kind of music you could play on a matatu, at a wedding, or during heartbreak. The boys weren't just musicians, they were storytellers of everyday Kenyan life. By their second album, Sol Filosofia, in 2011, the group had matured. They began addressing deeper themes: love, identity, even politics. Their fanbase grew not just in Kenya, but across East Africa. But their true explosion came in 2015 with Live and Die in Africa. That album wasn't just music, it was a movement. Still the One, Nuria, and Sura Yako became anthems. They played on radio, weddings, rallies, everywhere. And then came the moment that changed everything. Performing for US President Barack Obama during his 2015 visit to Kenya. It wasn't just about the song. It was about the symbolism. That a Kenyan group, homegrown, could perform on a global political stage. Sauti Sol had arrived, not just as entertainers, but as ambassadors of African sound. But behind every harmony lies dissonance. As Sauti Sol grew, so did the individuality of its members. Bien was increasingly influenced by Western pop and songwriting techniques. Savara, always the beat genius, dove deep into sound production and Afrofusion. Chimano explored art, fashion, and identity, pushing boundaries with his expressive style. Polycarp took an interest in acoustic collaborations and African social issues. They were growing, as men, as artists, and as individuals. And with growth, came tension. Not conflict, but creative drift. They were no longer just four boys harmonizing in a dorm room. They were four stars orbiting the same sun, but pulling in different directions. In 2019, they launched Sol Generation, a record label designed to mentor new talent. But in hindsight, it was also a signal. The group was preparing for life beyond Sauti Sol. The pandemic in 2020 gave them the pause they didn't know they needed. Away from tours, interviews, and rehearsals, they began to reflect. Who am I, outside of the group? Their 2020 album, Midnight Train, was rich and personal. There were songs about healing, betrayal, legacy, and perhaps, closure. It was polished, emotional, and for those paying attention, it sounded like goodbye. In May 2023, Sauti Sol announced what fans feared, an indefinite hiatus. No drama, no public fallout, just a mutual decision to explore solo paths. And that's what made it harder to process. It wasn't bitter, it was mature, it was respectful. But for fans, it was the end of an era. Today, the members are thriving in their own lanes. Bien tours Europe and West Africa, collaborating with stars and crafting solo albums. Chimano is a bold voice for freedom, art, and gender expression. Savara is producing, mentoring, and experimenting with cross-genre sounds. Polycarp, aka Fancy Fingers, is telling acoustic African stories and supporting community causes. In Sauti Sol, still playing, still trending, still loved, because great bands don't just disappear, they become legacy. They reminded us that African music can be bold, proud, and soulful. That brotherhood can evolve, without breaking. And that even when the group pauses, the impact remains. So, will they ever reunite? Maybe, maybe not, but one thing's for sure. The sun of Sauti Sol already rose, and it's still shining.